Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And it's really a proud privilege to be giving this keynote address in front of such an august gathering of industry leaders, pioneers, veterans, stalwarts, colleagues, etc., etc. So thank you all for coming. And this is a keynote address. You have a lot of heavy sessions going ahead, so I promise not to make this really heavy. We have some light slides and some entertainment also from my side, I think. All right. So what we have today is not an event. It's a conversation. It's a conversation about the future. It's a dialogue about transformation. And it's a commitment to excellence. All right. We stand at a cusp when everybody is talking about transformation. And transformation trends in technology. But transformation is not just a trend today. It's a movement. Talk about the numbers of transformation. I had heard of business transformation, digital transformation, process transformation, and today when I was speaking to Ajit, he told me his son is in finance transformation. I heard that for the first time. So there are a whole lot of different transformations going on, and I don't think it's a trend, I think it's a movement. Transformation forces you to rethink and reimagine processes, process innovation, sustainability, technology, productivity, etc., etc. All of us today are at a very crucial juncture or a critical juncture where the rate of change, the pace of change is really super fast. And in order to keep up with the rate of change, we need to pull up our socks, up our game, and that's where actually transformation comes in. If you look at the market scenario, there is a huge pressure in the chemical sector on being competitive. There are pressures on margins. There are pressures on upping your revenue. Being a competitive field, you need to produce higher quality at a lesser cost. There are pressures on spends. All right, you need to bring down your operational costs. And the new pressure is the regulatory pressure that comes from sustainability and ESG. Now, gentlemen, sustainability no longer is a buzzword, like Praveen said in his opening remarks. It's not a buzzword. It is a business imperative. It's critical to business. Today we have very complex ESG frameworks that actually quantify your sustainability. So gone are the days when we in chemical sector would stand up and say, oh, we build everything sustainably. It's measured today. There's a score. You are in a quantile. You can say, I'm 98.7% score on my ESG rating, and that gets published all over. And if you're like the PI industries, if you're exporting to Western economies, sustainability is very, very critical going ahead. Now, the issue is, with all these pressures, sustainability, regulatory, getting your revenue up, bringing your costs down, etc., etc., while all that is very daunting, but there is a beacon of hope, and that beacon of hope, I would say, is called digital transformation. We'll talk more about this as we move ahead. ये काम नहीं कर रहा है. All right. All right, so research shows that 70% of chemical companies leveraging digital tools report a 15 to 20% increase in efficiency in the first year. All right, and I can tell you, in the last company that I worked for, we used to try to address all these challenges manually. And imagine the daunting task of looking at millions of bits of data on Excel sheets and trying to achieve operational excellence. It was almost an impossible task, and to achieve a figure like this in the first year is only and only possible if you have digital tools. But, before I move on and talk more about this, I'd like to give you all a slightly a different background about myself. So, yes, Praveen spoke and said, I have industry experience, which I have. 15 years I've been in the industry. But the prior 23 years, I was in the Indian Army, all right? I joined as a second lieutenant, and I left as a full colonel after 23 years. And my first half of my stint in the army was in operations, pure operations. I was in Kashmir, I was in IPKF in Sri Lanka, I was in the East, all over the place. And the second half was, in the field of technology. So what I'm going to tell you something interesting that I learned in the army, and I found a great simile of what we are trying to achieve here in operational excellence to digital transformation. But how did army achieve its operational excellence in absence of digital transformation? And we'll kind of conclude that towards the end. So how many of you have heard of the OODA loop? It's a very, very military term, but has somebody heard of it? I think one odd. Yeah, all right. Hardly anyone. That's great. So OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide and Act. All right. Now in the army context, what does it mean? So when I was training in the National Defence Academy at Kharakwasla, a cadet, 16, 17 years of age, we were taught to be a leader in a section. A section is the smallest fighting unit in the army. There are 9 guys besides you. And you are an independent fighting unit when there's a battle on. So when we were taught section level tactics, we were taught the OODA loop. They said, this is your fundamental principle. When you're in the battlefield and there is this darkness or fog of war, you don't know what's going on around you, you follow the OODA. So you observe, you orient, you decide and you act. And what does that mean? It means that, suppose as a section commander, I'm in the battlefield, I see a flash of light. It doesn't mean कि अपने 9 बंदों को बोला धावा बोल दो and you go there and you find there are 150 enemies sitting out there and you'll get fried. All right. So the first thing is observe. You'll say, okay, there was a flash of light. I'll send a 2-man team. They'll quietly reconnaissance, find out what that flash of light was. They'll come back and report. And they might say, yes, there is enemy sitting. All right. They might say the enemy is 6 in number, 2 in number, 100 in number, whatever it is. That's the information that you get out of it. You'll orient yourself. You want to know you've seen that flash of light. Before you even do something to it or even send a recce party, the first thing you want to do is orient yourself. Where am I? Where are my dispositions? Where is my support? Where is the enemy? What is the battlefield looking like from my view? And when you orient yourself, then you know if that flash of light has come from there, it's probably the enemy. Then you reconnaissance also. And then you carry out your orientation. And once you orient and do your recce, then you have information available to you. That there are 150 people. So the action that you're going to take, which is the act part of it, is totally based on observe, orient, decide. Now you have data to act on. You'll say, okay, 150 people, we are 10, we can't do anything. So either you stay back in your decision or you ask for support, you go back and come back again in a larger force strength, and you take a decision based on that. If there are 3 people there, then we decide, let's eliminate these guys. And then you operationally go and do your tactics and you figure it out and destroy them. So that was the OODA loop. But the beauty of the OODA loop was when from NDA, we went to the Indian Military Academy, and that's the last step before you become an officer in the Indian Army. So there we were upgraded. From being a section commander, we were platoon commanders. So each platoon has 3 sections of 10 people. Now you're a platoon commander. And this time we thought we learned something new. They said you have to follow the OODA loop. You know what the OODA loop is? So now the platoon horizon and boundaries grow in size. You have a larger area to cover. You have 3 sections doing their OODA, but you also as a platoon commander have to do your OODA loop before you take any action. All right? So we said, fine, OODA loop. And then I got commissioned, joined the Indian Army. And within 2 years, I was a company commander. So a company commander, the company has 3 platoons, each having 3 sections, and your beat is much more, hundreds of kilometers. And there again, we thought we learned something new, but they said, OODA loop. All right. And OODA loop got more complex because now you talk of fire support, you talk of logistics, fuel, ammunition, dumping, this, that. A whole lot of complexity gets added, but the basic principle was the OODA loop. All right. So we said, okay, fine. And then 15 years down the line, I became a commanding officer. I was commanding a unit in Kashmir. And I had these 3 companies, each with 3 platoons, each with 3 sections. The beat was from J&K right down to Himachal Pradesh. And what was it I was told? What to do? Thank you very much. You all know the OODA loop very well now. You can join the army also. So OODA loop. And yes, it got very complex because now we had artillery support, air defense support, telecom, this, that, all that happened. But it was the OODA loop at the end of the day. So I would like you all to keep the OODA loop in mind, and we will revisit the OODA loop at a later point in time. All right. So my topic is achieving operational excellence through digital transformation. And if you just break it down, the anatomy is my agenda. What is operational excellence? How does digital transformation help us achieve operational excellence? All right. So what is operational excellence? In fact, before I came for the keynote, I was told that I have to kind of speak on this. So I knew what operational excellence is, but I thought, let me make it more context sensitive by speaking to a few leaders in the chemical industry. So I pinged to a chief operations officer in chemical, Pradeep Jain. I spoke to him, asked him what he thinks of operations excellence is. Then I spoke to the CEO of CSM business in PI Industries, Atul Gupta. I asked his opinion. I spoke to another guy called Vishwajit, who was a plant head. And I spoke to some other folks in Deepak Fertilizers and Garda Chemicals, etc. And I just kind of brainstormed with them for 15, 20 minutes each to get their view of what operational excellence is. And, you know, the common thread that I got from them was that there are different things that you do, all right? And different people have different definitions of operational excellence. And all of you are from the chemical sector. So I was speaking to somebody just some time back, and he said they have their small teams driving excellence towards energy management. So is that operational excellence? To some sense, yes, it is also an operational excellence activity. But what I also found interestingly was that different folks had different challenges. The addressing of those challenges, to meet the requirement of those challenges, to address those challenges and turn them into opportunities and to kill those challenges was what operational excellence was. And what were these challenges in the chemical sector? So I bucketed them into these following groups for you to see. Different people spoke about different things, but these were the most common ones that I got, and this is the common denominator of the whole lot. So the first was capacity enhancement. Now imagine capacity enhancement everybody wants to do. You can enhance your capacity by building 20 other plants. You have more capacity. But capacity enhancement through cycle optimization. And that is the difficult task. And I have seen in my previous organization, PI Industries, we had been trying to do this. We had DCS systems, we had plants, and people used to study processes, and they used to decide, okay, if we alter the reactor temperature and keep it at this range, or probably use this solvent instead of that, and the flow rate is this, then probably we'll get this from a chemical perspective and we'll be able to reduce the cycle time. They achieved partial success, but I won't say anything earth-shattering. All right. So this is a challenge that is across the industry, optimizing your cycle time to give you more capacity. And I'll tell you what happened in PI Industries. We went through some digital transformation when I was the CIO, and we implemented a digital transformation tool. All right. In the implementation of the digital transformation tool, we got to see all the data that we could never see before. We also had historical data because we had DCS systems with us. And suddenly we had a pool of data that this transformation platform sat on, and it would give us not only the current real-time view of the entire plant and what's happening, but also because there was historical data, we could apply machine learning models and AI models on top of it to decide what was the best cycle that we had over a period of time, and we called it the golden batch. Some of you I know are doing that golden batch project. So the moment we knew that this batch was the most ideal batch, this had the best cycle time, the best quality, and that was the golden batch. Then we also knew that the currently running operations on the plant are deviating from the golden batch. In what respect? Because we could see that real-time data. We could observe that real-time data. And because we could see that data, we could take decisions on what to do with that data. Increase the furnace temperature or not. And the system would also prompt us and tell us, if you do this, then probably this is going to happen. And that helped us reduce the cycle time. And we first did it with one plant. And the saving was, I remember, from an average cycle time of 21 days, we came down to an average cycle time of 17 days. It's a 4-day saving in a cycle in a batch production environment, which means 365 by 17 into 4 is your gain of days that you get straight away across, which means you're producing more, all right? Which means your top line has gone up, your bottom line has gone up. One digital tool, one plant, 38 crores, top line improvement. And then the moment this happened, after the first year, the CEO presented to the board, I also presented to the board, and the CEO agreed, and they said do it for all the plants have it now. Yield optimization. Praveen, is there any way I can get to know when I'm running out of time? Just indicate, yeah. Yield optimization, so quality, yield, cycle, standard templates, very critical, and that's what's going to happen when you're looking at a revenue enhancement. All right, so you're looking at upping your revenue. Combined with upping your revenue is the last part in my slide, which is managing spends. So talk about managing spends, very critical. So all the operations guys I spoke to, many of their local operational initiatives were around how do we, reduce costs. All along my journey in PI, I have seen that. Cost reduction, cost reduction, cost reduction. How do we achieve that? And then that ultimately boils down to asset utilization. You want to manage your spend? How are your assets placed? Are you able to utilize the assets optimally? Are they 90% occupied, 100% or the 50% occupied? And you'll be surprised when you take a stock that the asset utilization, average asset utilization level is, in India, is 70 to 75, 80%, whereas it could go up beyond 90, 95%. Asset wastage. Assets have been purchased, assets are not being used. Major issue. The biggest problem is unscheduled downtime. And you all are aware, you're in the chemical sector, suddenly there's an issue, you have a downtime. What does that downtime mean? It means loss of production, your top line impacted, bottom line impacted, human productivity impacted. And therefore, this becomes a very critical thing. And we are talking about these challenges in the environment, in the chemical sector. So remember what I said when I spoke to them, they said operational excellence is actually overcoming these challenges. And that's what operational excellence does. So unscheduled downtimes. Is there any way to get to know that there is likelihood to be a downtime? If you have a manual plant, no. If you have a DCS system or a PLC or a SCADA, maybe no, because you're not doing anything with the data. But if you have a system that is able to get that data and give you visibility of the data, then you can do condition-based monitoring, and have alerts coming in, warnings coming in that allow you to take proactive action. You can run AI and machine learning models on historical data that give you great predictive analytics and advanced model building around that. Then this capacity optimization or asset optimization or consolidation, this is not asset wastage. It's across multiple plants. We have 16 multi-product plants in PI Industries. Am I able to optimize and utilize my assets across those 60 plants? If there's a wastage happening here, can I put it there and use it there? That kind of thing. For that, you need the ability to see a unified view of operations. All right, and that also is a challenge. You have 15 plants, 15 DCS systems, data in silos in all the 15 plants, 15 monitoring teams monitoring that plant and controlling that plant. And therefore, there is that big challenge of how to manage your spend by bringing this down and probably unifying the whole thing and consolidating the whole view. Then we come to the ESG and sustainability aspect, and I spoke about it. So everybody knows about energy conservation. Chemical plants are energy hungry. Gas, coal, power, captive power, name a thing, they are very energy hungry. And the moment you tackle the energy part of it from an optimization perspective, you again got your uptick on your managing spends and enhancing revenue, plus you get your carbon credit and ESG scores going up. Water conservation, similar story. But the one thing that I found a lot of chemical operations leaders talked about was solvent recovery and recycling. So solvent recovery is obviously the material in which you carry out chemical reactions is called solvent. So once your reaction is over, you can dump that solvent. So it will either go into the ground or it will go into the water. Now that parameter is nowadays becoming very critical in ESG ratings. And therefore there's a lot of pressure on operations teams to take that solvent and keep recycling it till they can't. And then they dispose it off in the way that they can. And that's a measurable component which kind of marks your score. So if these are the challenges, and then how do you overcome these challenges? All right. So I know that many of you are still in the domain where you don't have much of IT-OT integration. And there are teams that kind of study these processes and they try to manually do these things. The issue with that is you download a lot of data in Excel. That's not real-time data because after you download it, there's new data that's got generated. And by the time you study that and by the time you come to a conclusion, that data is already 1 month old. The plant has moved on with new data. So any initiative that you take and drill down and apply is not very current because data has changed over that period of time. So really speaking, the initiatives strive to reach excellence, but they are not able to get really more than a couple of percentage points here and there. But you want to achieve 15-20%, then the only answer is digital transformation. And that's where the meaning of operational excellence comes in. It is our ability to address your challenges from the view of increasing your revenue, managing your spends, minimizing and mitigating risks, which was the last two parts, mitigating risk and productivity and human productivity, and addressing all those concerns is operational excellence. And how would you achieve operational excellence? The only way to achieve operational excellence is, gentlemen, through digital transformation. All right? And there is no other shortcut to it, which means the first step is you need to be able to, what is the first word in O in the OODA loop? You need to observe your data. You need to see what's happening in the plant. If you don't see that, what can't be seen cannot be monitored, what cannot be monitored cannot be optimized. So you need to see what's happening, and that can only happen when you have digital transformation. Therefore, you need to see data. And therefore, information management becomes the key in a chemical plant or in any manufacturing operations. It's the key to any digital transformation. And we talk about information and data. Obviously, we are talking of how do we capture that data from the OT systems that is there. Because OT protocols are totally different from IT protocols. The data there are very different. They look different. The structures are different. They're not IT kind of data. So how do you capture that data? Then how do you store that data? So once you've captured and stored that data, fine. And then the next thing is contextualizing it. Most important. This data is showing current variations, but it's coming from a pump. And therefore it's correlated to the RPM. That's the context. And that pump is correlated to a larger asset framework, which is pushing some effluent, some solvent, something into a chemical engineering process. And the furnace is at so-and-so temperature. The temperatures of the furnace oil, there's a temperature of the furnace material also. There's a roof temperature, there's a bar temperature, so many things. So putting context to the data becomes very critical. And then once you have context to the data, then you can convert the data to knowledge and to intelligence and then take data-driven decisions. All right. But the problem is that if you look at the components that play around in a large chemical manufacturing place, there are huge number of components. There's an interplay of things happening. You have various types of systems that generate data. You have DCS, PLC, SCADA, and some other types of sensors that might be generating data. And you have this huge interplay of various types of devices, assets, IT components through which the data comes. And then in the end, you have a different types of data consumers. You would not want a plant operator to see a larger plant. You would want him to see specifically what he's supposed to see. A supervisor sees what he's supposed to see. A plant manager is supposed to see what he's supposed to see, and so on and so forth. And maybe the chief operating officer would see a larger play of the whole plant, which is KPI based, and he knows what's going on where across the ecosystem of the plant. So how do you make that happen? The only way you can make it happen is by going in for a good enterprise class digital transformation platform, something like the AVEVA PI system or the AVEVA PI system. It's one of the most powerful platforms that can pick this data up, that can transform the data, contextualize it, give meaning, store the data, give meaning to the data, and turn it into intelligence and information. Today we have a couple of booths outside that will also demonstrate to you the power of AVEVA PI when you're pulling out data from manufacturing systems and you're displaying them. They're all contextual to chemical industry. So what it basically does is, it's going to take, collect, store, contextualize, and help you visualize. So the moment you are able to see the plant operational data, and I'll tell you what happened in my company. So when we deployed that system, the idea was to first deploy it for golden batch. And we said, this is what we are doing. But later on, we found the teams also started using that visualization system for finding faults and to look at why a particular incident took place. And because now everything was clear and visible. So it also resulted in great amount of collaboration, because earlier when there was a downtime, there would be siloed teams who would keep blaming each other. He did that, he did that, he did that, and then you're sitting in a large meeting with no conclusion. But now what happened was suddenly everything was visible. So in the teams, the guy who made a mistake, or the guy who didn't take things in time, or the guy who owned that issue, knew that he owns it because he could see it, and everybody knew he owned it. So the conversation was different. It's what happened, what can we do to avoid it? So the conversation quality also changed. So great collaborative tool, of course, it does all the other things that we talked about. All right. Now, the whole idea, at the end of the day, when you look at digital transformation, the whole idea is to have firstly a single source of truth across your entire manufacturing ecosystem. All right, and that single source of truth is very critical, and therefore, gentlemen, I have a message here for you. You see, you can pick up data from a manufacturing organization, a plant, all right? You can put it in a SQL server. You can throw Power BI on top of it and do some local coding to show you some dashboards. But is that going to be sustainable? Is that long term? Is that scalable? Answer is no. You'll always need an IT team to continuously deliver the dashboards that you want, A. Secondly, from a scalability perspective, tomorrow if you want something else and another component comes in which is related to your operations or the plant operations, amalgamating that component into your existing custom-made software is going to be extremely difficult, time-consuming. Therefore, it's very important that you go in for a platform that provides you the ability to have a single thread of data and unified data truth, allowing you to not only visualize your data at an enterprise level, but also to do many other things. So if you look at it, the first thing that you're looking at is converging information technology, engineering technology, and operational technology. The first part, OT ka data, IT, and then engineering data also. And can you then see it from an enterprise perspective? That's enterprise viewing. That's the first part. The second also very important part is around engineering technologies. One of the biggest challenges in the chemical sector, and you'll agree with me, is a component which is called technology transfer. So for example, we have our kilo plant and pilot plant at Udaipur. So you do something in the kilo plant, then you upgrade the technology, go to a pilot plant, and you produce hundreds of kgs in the pilot plant a day. When you're satisfied that your engineering processes are good, then you do a tech transfer and take that tech transfer to the realm of manufacturing. And then do it at a large scale, 100 tons, 1,000 tons a month, for example. And that part is called a tech transfer. I have found, in my experience in the last 9 years, that whenever a tech transfer takes place, it's never smooth. There's a downtime of months because what they envisaged, what they saw at a smaller scale didn't work out at a larger scale. And that's where the second component comes in, which is simulation and learning. All right, the idea, concept of a digital twin, the ability to simulate a plant and the ability to simulate and see what's going to happen when it's taken at a larger scale and take corrective actions in the simulation and then build those actions when you finally do a tech transfer. So when you want to have a platform like that, which is going to allow you to do that, and the basis is data at the end of the day. So here, what I'm trying to tell you here is that you need to go in for an enterprise class platform because it will allow you analytics, visualization. It will also allow you to plug in all these components, and these will seamlessly talk to each other. All right. So asset performance utilization, production optimization, and planning and scheduling. Planning and scheduling is another, huge daunting task. You have a plant, it's producing batches. Between two batches, you have time because that's how the market demand is. So in that time that you have, you want to readjust your engineering to produce another product very quickly. So that scheduling and planning is by itself a complex subject. And the moment you have engineering technologies embedded with your IT, OT, that's something that you're able to simulate and do, and you're able to see what products can fit in that window of time that you have before the other batch of the other product comes in. So on and so forth. So great possibilities unlock with the ability to monitor, control, automate, visualize, etc., etc. All right. So what does the future view of operations look like? All right. So if you do all this, then here's what it's going to look like. You will have full visibility and operational awareness. You will have an amazing ability to control how your assets are utilized, how they perform, what the health is, and optimize the utilization of your assets. Your production cycles will be optimized. You can optimize the production cycles. So therefore, and each of them, and of course, energy and resource utilization, etc., will all be taken care of. And each of these is going to impact those 5 critical focus, strategic focus areas of revenue management, spend management, risk mitigation, ESG, and human productivity. All right, these 5 things will get addressed when you do this. So this is how you move towards digital transformation and achieve operational excellence. And so I would also like to mention here that there are 2 things I want to say. The first thing is about investments. All right, there are no free lunches in the market. Digital transformation will come at a cost, but it's your mindset. It's not actually a cost. It's an investment. The moment you invest in digital transformation, you're going to get an ROI that's going to pay you back multifold. The second thing is, don't shy from taking that first step. Call us, call Grassdoor, call AVEVA. Take that first step. Take a baby step if nothing else. Take that step, move up, move forward. Do a small plant with a small use case first. Get confidence and then move on to larger zones, which is what we also did. All right. Now, having said that, ladies and gentlemen, let us revisit the OODA loop. So, from those days of operations in the army, where we had observe, orient, decide and act and no digital data, to today, when we have cutting edge data that is available, the 4 words actually become capture and store, contextualize, data to intelligence and action. So guys, get ready to run the OODA loop in the world of digital transformation. Thank you very much. Let's win the battle together. Thank you.